Hello, people of the internet, and welcome to a very special short edition of the Unnamed Games podcast. I'm Craig, the usual host of the cast, and I have with me just one of the usual crew. It's Mr. Chris Ratley.
How are you, mate? Here? This isn't normal. Everything's gone wrong. Time and space have no meaning.
So, today we're going to talk about a little something. There's been maybe a little bit of a leak online now for the So looking behind me and behind Ratley and on his head and on his chest, you may have deciphered what we're going to talk about, and that is the leak of the Division Heartland. I think it was a technical closed alpha, I believe, wasn't it, Chris?
Yeah, from what I understand. I mean, we're obviously not privy to exactly what's going on, but the sort of the developer intro that also leaked alongside all this, that pretty much says that, it even says, don't leak this. And don't be that guy. And they leaked it.
I'm guessing that message didn't really work, did it?
Yeah. I mean, I say, but do you think that sometimes if you ask someone, it's just like saying, whatever you do, don't think about this. All you can do is think about it. So say, don't leak this. It's like, well, guess what I'm doing after this?
Don't push that big red button.
Exactly. Don't accidentally activate crossplay, whatever you do.
Yeah. Oh, that's a separate thing, isn't it? But yeah, quality stuff. Yeah, so we thought we'd just get together and do a really brief, quick little video on it. Like I say, the whole crew's not here. It's really important, I think, that we get Chris's opinion on the whole thing, because he has sunk many, many, many hours into the division, and both of them at that.
Scandalous lies.
So, as Chris sort of pointed out, this... there was an NDA, obviously, on all of this footage. It looks like it's very, very early closed footage, complete with a video as well from one of the developers. So I guess, I'm just going to hand it off to Chris and kind of get Chris's impression from it, and then maybe see if I might have some input from there, or maybe some questions that he might be able to highlight. So over to you, my man.
So basically we got 20 minutes of leaked gameplay. We got a developer intro explaining what the game is, essentially. And I think that's probably the best place to start. So what we're getting is it's obviously free to play. We are moving from big cities like we've had New York and Washington, D.C. We're now moving into a town called Silver Creek. And it's going to be like a more rural Heartland America, hence the name, experience. And it's basically going to be two modes. It's going to be a PvE mode called Expeditions. And then there is a PvEVP mode, which is going to be called a Storm. Now, basically, to me, straight off the bat, my brain went straight to Division 1 and to Survival, which is one of my favourite pieces of DLC for any game. It's a community favourite in the Division. It's one of the greatest game modes I've played in a game. It was such a great enhancement that really flew under the radar for a lot of people who played the Division, because by the time it dropped, most people had left the game. If we wind back the timeline, I totally understand why people had left the game by this point. Yeah, I was trying desperately to get people to come back and try Survival, because it was such a fantastic experience.
I think I'm one of those people. I played the Division when it first came out. I played through the campaign, played it with friends, really, really enjoyed it. Got to the end game, played a little bit of the Dark Zone, and then I was kind of like, I guess I'm kind of done now, really. There wasn't a huge amount of content at the end. And like you say, it seems to be quite well documented in the industry that there's one of the biggest sort of turnarounds of a game, isn't it, over time, that Division 1 scored, like 2 or 3 years later was, several points higher on the review scale, just because of all this amazing extra content they added in, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there were sort of 4 major content patches for Division 1. The Survival was the second of the big drops, and it was the first big game mode add-on, essentially. And so just to give you a heads up of what Survival was, it was a standalone isolation experience where you as an agent would queue into either a PvE or a PvP arena, and they put the whole of the New York map in play, which was unlike everything else. And you would go to extract some antivirals, get caught in a storm, which would wreck your helicopter, which meant the Division should never fly helicopters ever, because every time they got in a helicopter, they crashed. But you would then be in surviving the crash, you would become infected with sepsis, and you basically had to move from the outskirts of the map to the Dark Zone, which was the center of the map. Find your way into the Dark Zone, find your antiviral cache within the Dark Zone that you were sent to retrieve originally. Go to an extraction, call an extraction, extract from the Dark Zone. It sounds really easy. in reality, you start with just a pistol and very basic gear. And as you get closer to the dark zone, the enemies get tougher. When you get in the dark zone, they significantly level up. And then when you try and extract, there is the wonderful wonder of a hunter. And if you've never faced a hunter in survival, you've never faced a hunter. Hunters were a new enemy type. They were savagely difficult to beat. My first time, I walked into an extraction in survival and went, "Ha! All these guys have died doing this. I've got on my purple gear. I'm going to go slap these guys about." And walked in, this thing went, "Bosh, you're dead." And I went, "Oh, I'm dead." And why it matters is in survival, if you die, you die. You're out of that thing. All your playtime is gone.
Yeah.
You're back to square one. So it took me like 6 attempts to finish and extract, and it was like proper seat in my pants. I'm barely getting out of this alive with me life kind of thing. So it was a much more exciting game mode because of the fact that everything mattered, your choices mattered.
Yeah.
And if you played PvE, it was just there were other agents in the session, but you couldn't interact with each other other than share loot. Whereas in the PvP mode, there were other agents in the session, and it was all fair game. You would kill other agents to get their loot, or they would kill you to get your loot. So you would get to an extraction, call an extraction, and the hunter would show up. And then if you weren't careful, suddenly out of nowhere, there'd be another hunter and a load of players, and you'd be facing hunters and players. And you'd be like, "What am I doing?" So it made the PvP more interesting as well because, again, it mattered more. So if this is a microcosm version of that, which it looks to be, in my opinion, the best Division experience there's been to date is going to get reborn.
Yeah.
And I'm
so was that Red Storm that did that particular mode, or do you know? No, okay.
Massive.
Okay.
Red Storm were responsible for tweaking and enhancing the PvP in the Division after a certain point. They were really responsible for it, and they did all the PvP in Division 2, which whilst it didn't work perfectly, there were some really good ideas in that as well. So Red Storm have got a good pedigree. Certainly the changes they made in Division 1 were massively beneficial to the game. They did a lot of tweaks and balances. The PvP side of it, which I spent a lot of time in the Dark Zone Division 1, and it was a bit broken at points. They did a lot of fixes. It wasn't all successful, but like most it was. And certainly they added Dark Zones. If you were an early Dark Division player who left and you never experienced Dark Zones 7, 8, and 9, like just the environment they made there was something else. That place was amazing. So I'm really excited to see what they've got to do with this. I love the way the guys are. They talk. When it comes to PvP, a couple of the guys up there are serious PvP players, and they love their PvP. So you can rest assured you're going to get a good PvP experience. If you like the Division PvP experience, let's be very clear. This isn't Call of Duty. This isn't Fortnite. This is a very different. It's its own PvP. I thoroughly enjoy it, but it isn't for everyone. It'll be interesting to see how the loot system works as well. How they're going to vary it, because both modes apparently encourage scavenging and foraging and getting your gear and new gear. And I wonder how they're going to balance that, because obviously if you can go in with a decked out agent, and then, meet guys who have barely got any gear, is it going to be that horrible ganking? Now they did that in the Division by separating the Dark Zone to brackets. So we'll see what
Yeah, I mean, maybe because it's going to be a game that's purely based around that, they'll be able to maybe skill-based matchmake a bit more, or maybe it is a case of, I don't know, maybe you just get the decent gear when you're in that PvP area, or it's...
Yeah, I would imagine, knowing the way they do Division does loot, I would imagine what will happen is you'll be able to get great gear outside of it, but the best gear will be in the PvP stuff in the Storm. That's my gut feeling is they're going to push, that would be how they push players into the PvP stuff. And don't get me wrong, I will say this about like Division and Survival. It was actually kind of cool to try and run a Survival and not like PvP. If you're in a PvP server, do the whole stealth ninja, avoid PvP encounters, but it was really interesting. So one of the things that you do if you were hunting or afraid of being hunted, if you in survival, the best loot was in the landmarks, and you go take the landmarks down to get the best loot. But as soon as you take down a landmark, everyone on the map can see that landmark's gone down. So if you're hunting, you need to go there because there are players there. If you're being hunted, you now know. Everyone knows this landmark's just dropped. You need to get your gear and get the hell out of there fast, and not just exfil like that area, but get well away from it, because you never know what you're going to encounter. The Division's done that risk reward thing quite well in the past. So I'm cautiously optimistic. We had a little discussion before we came on about bullet sponginess, and we'll have to see what happens, because I said to you, there's some, if it's bullet spongy with like the instant heals, that's definitely not a good thing, because that was what caused a lot of problems with the Division 1's PvP was like everyone was super tanky and could heal instantly. So you had people who could just never-ending heal and just like shirk off damage. And in Division 2, it kind of went too far the other way, where we had like super glassy builds, and then everyone was just running up to you, blatting you in the back. You had no time to react, you just get killed. So it just bred this, like the Dark Zone became less PvP and more gank central. You know, so it's a weird combination. I would say, give me the spongy without the instant heals, or give me the instant heals and the glassiness, and I think we've got a kind of a better balance personally.
Cool. Yeah, because I mean, when I saw Storm, I mean, the first thing that kind of popped into my mind, I guess, just because I don't have that experience with the survival thing, and I guess it makes sense, you know, it was a snowstorm type thing, was I was thinking Fortnite, is it going to be... is it going to be a battle royale, closing in Storm, pushing people together? Do you think it might be something like that?
There's going to be an element of that, 100%. Yeah. I think from what little we saw, there's going to be like the pop-up areas of the virus cropping up, which are going to force people into certain areas. Again, I'm not sure if they're going to be a risk-reward thing. Like if you go into the viral areas, there's going to be better loot in them. Again, if you leverage certain mechanics the Division's done in the past, there was in the Dark Zone Division 1, there was a mechanic they added where there were, in the subways and the sewers, there were events that would crop up where basically they became uninhabitable for a little while. You couldn't survive down there because it was too toxic. After the initial toxic blast happened down there, they would then fade down, and you could go down there, but only with you'd still take a lot of damage from the environment. But there were enemies in there who would only last while there was a toxic environment, who, if you killed them, had much better loot drops. And that was really interesting, because you go in there on the high risk of better loot drops with tougher enemies and taking environmental damage, with the risk, of course, that someone could run up and start engaging you in a PvP fight as well. So I reckon we'll see sort of that kind of thing happening as well. It'll be really interesting to see what elements of Division lore and existing gameplay we've had make their way into this. I mean, obviously with it being free to play as well, the nice thing is just download it and have a go. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. I think that what you're right about, what you say about the Fortnite thing also leverages that, trying to force it together. They're looking for a Fortnite here, aren't they? Like Fortnite being free to play.
It wouldn't be really.
It makes Epic all the money in the world. So they're like, cool, could we do that with the Division or another IP? So I mean, I'm a little concerned in that respect, because that might leverage it, but it hasn't really affected Fortnite. Fortnite plays like Fortnite should, and Epic have made a success of it because they made a good game first and foremost that people want to spend money on. And I think that's we've talked about this loads on the pod and said, basically, give us good content, we'll spend the money. And I know you weren't there last night, but we talked about the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and me, Alan, and Phil agreed. Basically, we were a little underwhelmed with it. It's still great, but if you'd have given me Mass Effect 1 completely remastered with all really new systems, we'd have jumped at the chance and given them 60 quid just for that. So I understand why they did it the way they did, and with Division, I think they're basically looking at this going, hey, can we make some good money off of this like Fortnite has? My concern is that Fortnite's Fortnite and isn't going to pull people out of Fortnite to play the Division. They're a very different thing. And if you're trying to replicate Fortnite by being Fortnite, you're going to fail, because Fortnite still exists. So I mean, I'm excited though as a Division player. It's interesting, it's new, it's something else to play.
I'm excited to play it, definitely. Well, sounds good. So I mean, we've got, obviously there is the ability to sign up, I believe, isn't there, if you want to be part of the early tests?
There was a link to sign up. I don't know if it's still live, but it was at the beginning, when they announced that you could sign up to be part of testing. Not this test. This was a very closed technical test, which of course somebody leaked. But good on
if you do get into the test, don't leak it. I would highly recommend you don't leak it.
If you're smart, if you're dumb enough to leak it, what if you don't put it on your own YouTube channel? Because guess what? You're going to have a YouTube channel for long if you do that. Hence the reason we haven't got any footage from the Heartland leak or anything to do with Heartland. It's we just wanted to talk about it. But it's fingers crossed it'll be a great game. We're really excited for it. It's coming either late 2021 or early 2022. Well, sometime in 2021, 2022. That's the guesstimate, is sometime around then. And we've got more Division 2 content to drop later in the year. And then there's the mobile game and yada, yada, yada. So plenty of Division stuff if you're a Division fan. I'm happy. So roll on Heartland.
Good stuff. Great. Well, it's great to talk to you about that, Chris, because I think it's important we get your thoughts on it. And I guess we'll leave it there and say goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.